In this lesson, we'll be analyzing a class list report. So before you start, make sure that you've got your class list report in front of you, along with the test that the report is about. Go ahead and pause the video if you don't have those handy and start it again when you're ready. As I said before in the video about running the class list report, the class list report drills down to student level data as opposed to the performance band report, which only gives class level data. This is going to allow us to build another layer into our remediation plan, small group differentiation of the remediation of standards. In other words, we'll know which students scored basic on an indicator and which scored proficient or advanced, and we will then plan a remediation strategy to target to the basic students in a different way than the proficient or advanced students. In my report, as you can see, I chose to color code it so that basic shows up as red, proficient bands show up as yellow, and advanced show up as green. In much the same way as the performance band report, I've got a bit of triage to do. If I had unlimited time to review and reteach, then I would likely spend a day on each indicator and differentiate as necessary. However, I don't have that time, and you likely don't either, so I'm going to pick my two lowest and most fundamental indicators. In this case, indicators 1.1.1 and 1.2.1 are not only the lowest indicators, but they also happen to be foundational to a student's understanding of algebra. And I'm going to focus my remediation efforts on those. Let's build a plan around indicator 1.1.1 as a model for how to develop a general remediation plan. Looking at the results, I really have three levels of achievement. One group with high proficient scores of 8, showing up in yellow, one group with high basic scores of 5 or 6, and then one student with a low basic score, only getting 1 out of 9 possible points for the indicator. My class structure for the day will have these students separated into 3 groups and 3 different activities for the day based on these levels of achievement. Now I should note before I go into the details of the plan that this is only one sketch of a plan for this data. You may find that you have a student or a group of students that do very well as peer tutors, in which case you should leverage their talents, as explaining a concept to another student is a high-level task in and of itself. Alternatively, you may find that those same high-achieving students do better on extension tasks working as a group while you spend your time with the lower-achieving half of the class. You truly know your classroom best and should plan accordingly, but do not give up on a strategy after only trying it once or twice. It could just be the topic or that the students aren't accustomed to the procedures, and quite often it helps to change strategies occasionally just to keep the methods fresh for the students. Let's get back to the data. Those students scoring in the high proficient band, students 1, 6, 7, and 11, remember we're in this column right here, this column. I've developed a high-level extension task for them to complete as a group that will be turned in at some point during the class. Knowing these students in my class, I can trust them to complete the work without much checking up on by me, but I will still be sure to stop by a few times during the class to clear up any misconceptions or ask further high-level questions to extend their knowledge to the next level. A good place to start looking for an extension activity is a sequentially higher topic in the knowledge map of your course. For instance, indicator 1.1.1 is fundamentally about patterns, which leads next into functions and creating function rules for certain sequences. By the time of the test, students have already been taught how to create function rules for arithmetic sequences, but that they have not been taught how to do it with geometric sequences, so this may be an extension activity worth looking at with these students. Alternatively, a field of math known as the calculus of finite differences is useful for creating function rules from sequences. It can be done with just about any sequence, but is rarely taught at the algebra level, even though it is easy to understand even for many middle school students. Giving the students an early look at material that comes after the test and indicator, or providing them with a new way of looking at the concept that probably would not be covered in the normal curriculum, are just two of the many ways that we can continue to support the growth of our highest achieving students on remediation days. Next, we focus on the students that scored in the high basic category. In this case, students 2, 4, 5, 9, and 10. These students were just a few points away from proficiency, and most likely have just a few misconceptions about the material that are holding them back from mastery. With these students, a strong remediation strategy is to sit with them and give them several problems of the type seen on the test. Do not immediately reteach them. Instead, serve as a moderator of sorts, allowing them to talk about the problems and try to come up with the solutions. Be the point person for directing questions like, how did they get that? And why does that work? Finally, allow the students to move to the next level of rigor as a group by providing them with higher order problems to solve together once they seem to have the foundational concepts down. With the lowest student, in this case student 3, the most intense work will be performed. At first, group the student with the high basic group, allowing them to listen in on problems and contribute as they can to the discussion. When the high basic group moves on to the higher order questions on their own, you can take this time for one-on-one individualized instruction to either reteach material or address misconceptions the student had. This will likely move much quicker and be much more targeted than your work with your other small groups, and the goal is to gradually release responsibility for the work to the student and then move them into the high basic group for continued higher order work. You may think that this is the end of the remediation cycle, but not quite yet. How will you find out if your remediation attempts were successful? A few days after the remediation is completed, as either an entrance or an exit ticket, give the students a few questions of the type seen on the assessment. Use as stated to plan for future remediation of the indicators. With any luck and some strong teaching strategies, your students will all have moved up to higher levels of achievement, and you will only need to have a question or two of that type further down the line to ensure retention of the material throughout the year. If a few students are still teetering on the edge between high basic and low proficient, working a few of these problems into warm-ups in the coming week or two will likely be sufficient to get them up to the appropriate level of achievement. Finally, if you still have significant misunderstandings and the material is necessary for understanding future concepts, try to work on an individualized plan with that student to get them back on track as soon as possible, whether it's a bit of extra work at home or taking a few minutes from each period's class's work time to break the concepts down further. This is the process that you'll take for each indicator as you choose to remediate on, of course, adjusted to the needs of your students and your course material. As always, if you have any further questions, please post them in the discussion board so our collective knowledge can help us all move our students to the next level of achievement. Thanks for listening.